The rain hammered against the windshield like bullets as Adrian Castellano's Aston Martin sliced through the night. He shouldn't have been driving, not after 3 glasses of scotch at the charity gala. But Adrian Castellano did what he wanted, when he wanted. At 34, he'd built a pharmaceutical empire worth $3 billion. Rules were for people who couldn't afford to break them. His phone buzzed for the 15th time. Miranda again. His fiancée, or was she his ex-fiancée now? He'd walked out of their engagement party an hour ago when he'd caught her kissing his business partner in the conservatory. The betrayal should have hurt more than it did, but Adrian realized he felt nothing. Just the familiar numbness that had defined his life since his parents died. The headlights appeared out of nowhere. Adrian swerved, his reflexes dulled by alcohol and anger. The other car, a beaten-up sedan, clipped his rear bumper, sending the Aston Martin spinning like a top on the slick asphalt. Metal screamed against metal. Glass shattered. Then came the impact that made everything go black. Pain dragged him back to consciousness. Not the sharp, immediate kind, but a deep, throbbing ache that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Adrian tried to open his eyes, but his lids felt weighted with lead. Voices swam in and out of his awareness. Massive internal. Bleeding. Fractured. Ribs punctured his lung. May not make it through the night, he wanted to tell. Them he was Adrian Castellano, that he had the best doctors in the world on speed dial. But his mouth wouldn't cooperate. Darkness claimed him again. When consciousness returned, it came slowly, like surfacing from deep water. The antiseptic smell hit him first. Hospital. His eyes fluttered open to find soft morning light filtering through plain curtains. This wasn't the private suite at Manhattan Presbyterian where his assistant would have taken him. This was ordinary, almost shabby. You're awake. The voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Adrian turned his head, slowly because even that small movement sent spikes of pain through his skull, and saw her. She was young, maybe 23 or 24, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her face held a kind of beauty that cosmetic surgeons tried and failed to create. Natural, unadorned, and somehow sad. She wore pale blue scrubs that had been washed so many times they'd faded nearly white. "Where am I?" Adrian's voice came out as a croak. St. Catherine's Community Hospital. She poured water into a plastic cup and held the straw to his lips. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. You were in an accident." The water was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted. As she pulled the cup away, their eyes met, and Adrian felt something he couldn't name. A spark, a recognition, as if his soul knew her even though they'd never met. "I'm Elena," she said, adjusting his IV with practiced efficiency. "I'll be taking care of you." Over the next 2 weeks, Elena became Adrian's world. She was there when he woke in the night, sweating and panicking, unable to breathe around the tubes in his chest. She was there during the painful rehabilitation sessions, encouraging him when he wanted to quit, celebrating the small victories like walking 3 steps without assistance. She was different from every woman he'd ever known. She didn't fawn over his wealth, mainly because he hadn't told her who he was. His wallet and phone had been destroyed in the crash, and some perverse impulse made him keep his identity secret. For the first time in his adult life, someone was treating him like a person instead of a bank account. "Why are you a nurse?" he asked one afternoon while she changed his bandages. Elena's hand stilled for just a moment. "I wanted to help people, to make a difference even if it's small." "That's it? No other reason?" Her dark eyes met his and he saw shadows there, secrets and sorrows she kept locked away. "Sometimes we do things for complicated reasons. Sometimes we start down one path and end up somewhere completely different." He wanted to push, to understand the sadness that clung to her like perfume. But she'd already turned away, disposing of the old bandages with meticulous care. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. His ribs ached, but that wasn't what kept him awake. It was Elena, the way she hummed softly while she worked, the gentleness of her hands, the way she looked at him sometimes as if she were memorizing his face for a portrait she'd never paint. He was falling for his nurse, and he didn't even know her last name. What Adrian didn't know, couldn't know, was that Elena wasn't a nurse at all. Elena Rodriguez leaned against the wall of the hospital supply closet, her hands shaking as she tried to steady her breathing. 3 weeks. She'd been playing this role for 3 weeks, and every day the lie grew heavier, pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She wasn't a nurse. She was a fraud, wearing stolen scrubs and a fake hospital badge that her brother's friend had made for $200 she couldn't afford. Every time she touched Adrian, checked his vitals, administered medication that real nurses prepared for her to deliver, she was committing a crime. She could go to prison, but none of that mattered compared to what she'd lost. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diego, her older brother. "Have you done it yet? He needs to pay, Elena, for what he did to me." Elena's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Diego was in a wheelchair now, his spine shattered in the accident that had destroyed both their lives. The accident that Adrian Castellano had caused by driving drunk and running a red light. Except, that wasn't entirely true, was it? The police report had been clear. Diego ran the light. He'd been texting while driving, not paying attention, and he'd crashed into Adrian's car. But Diego swore it was a lie, that Adrian's wealth had bought false testimony, that the billionaire had destroyed the evidence proving his guilt. "He took everything from us." Diego had raged from his hospital bed while Elena held his hand and watched her strong, proud brother break. "My legs, my job, my future. And he'll walk away because he's rich and we're nothing. Someone needs to make him understand what he did. Someone needs to make him hurt. That someone was supposed to be Elena. The plan was simple. Get close to Adrian during his recovery, make him trust her, care about her. Then when he was most vulnerable, reveal who she was and destroy him emotionally the way he'd destroyed Diego physically. Let him know that the woman he'd opened his heart to was the sister of the man whose life he'd ruined." It had seemed righteous then, sitting in the cramped apartment they could barely afford, watching Diego struggle to transfer from his wheelchair to the bed. It had seemed like justice, but that was before she'd actually met Adrian Castellano, the man Diego described, arrogant, heartless, drunk on power and privilege, didn't match the person Elena had spent the last 3 weeks with. Yes, Adrian had money. Yes, he had that natural authority that came from always being the smartest, richest person in the room. But he was also kind, funny, vulnerable in ways he tried to hide. He asked about her life, actually listened to her answers. He remembered that she preferred tea to coffee, that she'd mentioned once wanting to visit the ocean, that her mother had died when she was 16. He made terrible jokes when she changed his bandages, trying to make her laugh so she wouldn't see him wince in pain. And the way he looked at her, no one had ever looked at Elena like that. Like she was precious, like she mattered. "Elena?" Adrian's voice called from his room. "Are you there?" She wiped her eyes, straightened her scrubs, and painted on the gentle smile she'd perfected. "Coming." He was sitting up in bed, which was progress. His color had returned, the gray pallor of near death replaced by healthy warmth. The bruises that had painted his face purple and yellow were fading. In another week, maybe 2, he'd be discharged. Then what? The question haunted her every waking moment. "I wanted to thank you," Adrian said as she entered, "for everything. I know I'm probably your most difficult patient." "You're not difficult," Elena said, checking his chart even though she couldn't fully understand half of what was written there. Thank God for the real nurses who took pity on her, who thought she was just a new hire struggling to learn the system. "I'm also not stupid." Adrian's voice had changed, taking on an edge she'd never heard before. Her heart stopped. "I know this is a county hospital, understaffed and overworked. I know you've been spending extra time with me, time you probably don't have. Why? Because I'm supposed to destroy you," Elena thought. "Because my brother's life is ruined and someone needs to pay. Because I'm living a lie and I don't know how to stop." "Because you need help," she said instead. Which was also true. Because everyone deserves care and compassion, regardless of who they are or what they've done. Adrian studied her for a long moment, and Elena felt exposed, as if he could see right through her lies to the truth beneath. "You're remarkable, you know that? In a world full of people who only care about what they can get from you, you're genuine, real." The guilt nearly choked her. That evening, as Elena prepared to leave her shift, if you could call this theater performance a shift, Adrian caught her hand. His touch was electric, sending warmth flooding through her body. "Stay," he said quietly, "just for a few more minutes. Talk to me." She should have left. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to end this before it went any further. But she sat down on the edge of his bed, her hand still in his, and stayed. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up wealthy but lonely, parents who were never there, boarding schools where money couldn't buy friendship. She told him about Diego, careful to change the details to make it seem like her brother's accident was years ago, unrelated to Adrian's crash. She told him about struggling to make ends meet, about dreams deferred and hopes that seemed foolish in the harsh light of reality. "What's your biggest dream?" Adrian asked, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. Elena thought about the truth. Enough money to pay for Diego's medical bills, for the experimental surgery that might let him walk again, for a future that didn't involve rage and revenge. Instead, she said, to matter, to know that my life made a difference, even a small one. "You matter to me," Adrian said softly, "more than I probably should. Admit to someone I've only known a few weeks, and there it was, the moment she'd been dreading and longing for in equal measure. Adrian couldn't pinpoint the exact moment he fell in love with Elena. Maybe it was the night she stayed past her shift when he had a panic attack, his chest tight with the memory of metal crumpling and glass shattering. She'd held his hand and talked him through it, her voice steady as an anchor. Maybe it was the morning he woke to find her asleep in the chair beside his bed, her neck bent at an uncomfortable angle because she'd been too worried to leave him alone. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was every moment combined. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the softness in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking, the careful tenderness with which she touched him, as if he were something precious that might break. He'd never felt precious before. Useful, yes, profitable, powerful, but never precious. "You're healing faster than expected," Dr. Morrison said during rounds, studying Adrian's chart with approval. "Another week, maybe less, and we can discharge you, though you'll need continued physical therapy and follow-up care." The words should have brought relief. Instead, Adrian felt panic claw at his throat. Leaving meant losing Elena. Once he was discharged, once he returned to his real life, the penthouse apartment, the company, the world of wealth and obligation, she'd be gone. Just another memory, fading like the bruises on his skin, unless he did something about it. That afternoon, when Elena came to check his vitals, Adrian made his decision. "I need to tell you something," he said, catching her wrist gently as she reached for his pulse. "I haven't been completely honest with you." Fear flashed across her face, so quick he almost missed it. "What do you mean?" "My name isn't just Adrian. It's Adrian Castellano. I own Castellano Pharmaceuticals. I'm wealthy, very wealthy." He watched her carefully, looking for the change he'd seen 1,000 times before. The calculation, the sudden interest, the dollar signs appearing in someone's eyes. But Elena just looked sad. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Because for the first time in my adult life, someone was seeing me. Not my bank account, not my connections, not what I could do for them. Just me." He took her hand in both of his. "Elena, I'm falling in love with you. I think I have been since the moment I opened my eyes and saw you standing there." She pulled away, turning to face the window. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You don't know me, Adrian." "Not really." "Then let me." He forced himself to sit up straighter, ignoring the pull of healing tissue. "Come with me when I leave here. Not as my nurse, as yourself. Let me take you to dinner. Show you the ocean you've always wanted to see, spend time with you outside these walls." "I can't." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why not?" She turned then, and the anguish in her eyes stole his breath. "Because I'm not who you think I am. Because I—" She stopped, shaking her head. "I need to go." "Elena, wait." But she was gone, practically running from the room. Adrian sat in the empty silence, his heart pounding. What had just happened? What was she so afraid of? That night, Elena didn't come for her shift. Neither did she come the next day, or the day after that. The other nurses made excuses. She was sick, she had a family emergency, she'd requested a transfer to a different floor. But Adrian knew. She was avoiding him. The realization hurt worse than the accident. On his last night in the hospital, Adrian finally got his answer, or rather part of it. He woke at 2 a.m. to find Elena standing in his doorway, her face wet with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" He sat up, fully awake now. "Elena, talk to me. Whatever it is, we can—" "No, we can't." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "I need to tell you the truth. About who I am. About why I'm really here." Adrian's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "My name is Elena Rodriguez. She watched his face, waiting for recognition. When none came, she continued. My brother is Diego Rodriguez. He was driving the other car the night of your accident. The world tilted. Adrian gripped the bed rail, his mind racing. Your brother? The one who ran the red light? He says you ran the light. That you were drunk. That your money bought false testimony and destroyed the evidence. Elena's voice was mechanical, reciting facts she'd repeated so often they'd lost meaning. He's paralyzed from the waist down. His life is destroyed. And he wanted revenge. So you... Adrian couldn't finish the sentence. The betrayal was too vast, too complete. I'm not a nurse, Elena said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I got a fake badge, stole scrubs, learned just enough to seem convincing. I was supposed to get close to you, make you care about me, then reveal the truth and destroy you emotionally. That was the plan. Adrian felt like he'd been hit all over again. Every moment they'd shared, every conversation, every touch, every look had been a lie. The woman he'd fallen in love with didn't exist. But I couldn't do it, Elena continued, tears streaming down her face. Because somewhere along the way it stopped being an act. Somewhere along the way I fell in love with you too. And I hate myself for it. I hate that I betrayed my brother, that I'm betraying you, that I'm caught between you both and I don't know what's true anymore. She sank to her knees, sobbing. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I never meant to. I didn't think I could. Adrian sat frozen, unable to process what he was hearing. Part of him wanted to rage, to throw her out, to call security and have her arrested. She'd committed fraud, possibly endangered his life with her medical incompetence, manipulated him when he was at his most vulnerable. But another part, the part that had opened his heart for the first time in years, saw the genuine agony in her face. She was suffering as much as he was. Get out, he said quietly. Elena looked up, her face ravaged by tears. Adrian, get out, please, I can't. I need you to leave. She stood on shaking legs, nodded once, and walked out of his life. Adrian sat alone in the darkness. Everything he thought he knew crumbling to ash around him. Adrian was discharged the next morning. His assistant, Marcus, picked him up in a new Aston Martin, identical to the one that had been totaled. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. The old life destroyed, an exact replica replacing it. As if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Welcome back. Sir? Marcus said, loading Adrian's minimal belongings into the trunk. Your calendar is catastrophically behind. The board meeting scheduled for... Tell me about Diego Rodriguez, Adrian interrupted. Marcus's professional mask slipped for just a moment. Sir, the other driver. The one from my accident. I want to know everything. By the time they reached Adrian's penthouse, he had the full story. Diego Rodriguez, age 28. Former construction worker. Paralyzed in the accident. No family except a younger sister. Medical bills in the hundreds of thousands. Living in a ground-floor studio in Brooklyn that his disability payments barely covered. Adrian also had the police report, the witness statements, the toxicology results. He'd been over the legal limit that night, yes, but the evidence was clear. Diego had run the red light while texting. It was Diego's fault, except Adrian had been drinking. He'd been angry, distracted, driving too fast. If he'd been sober, would his reflexes have been better? Could he have avoided the crash? Would Diego still be walking if Adrian hadn't gotten behind the wheel? The law said he wasn't responsible. His conscience wasn't so sure. For 3 days, Adrian threw himself into work, trying to bury his feelings under spreadsheets and conference calls. It didn't work. At night, alone in his pristine penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, he thought about Elena. The way she'd looked at him. The gentleness of her touch. The tears on her face when she'd confessed. She'd lied to him. But in the end, she'd told the truth, knowing it would destroy whatever was between them. That took courage. On the 4th day, Adrian's head of security delivered a file. You asked me to look into Elena Rodriguez, sir. This is what I found. Adrian read in silence. Elena, age 24, high school valedictorian, full scholarship to NYU's nursing program. A real nursing program, not the lies she'd told. But she'd dropped out after 1 semester. Why? Adrian asked. Her mother's medical bills, from what I can tell. Cancer. Elena worked 3 jobs to pay for treatment. But it wasn't enough. Her mother died anyway. That's when she moved in with her brother. Adrian kept reading. Elena worked at a coffee shop, a bookstore, and as a dog walker. She sent most of her money to Diego for his medical expenses. She lived in a tiny room in Queens, barely bigger than a closet. She had no social life, no luxuries, no future beyond surviving one day to the next. She'd sacrificed everything for her brother, and when Diego had asked her to do something unconscionable, she'd agreed, because family was all she had left. Adrian understood that kind of love. His parents hadn't been affectionate, but he'd loved them. When they died in a plane crash, he'd nearly destroyed himself trying to save the company they'd built, to honor their memory, to prove he was worth the legacy they'd left him. Family made you do impossible things, even terrible things. Find her, Adrian told his security chief. I need to talk to her. But Elena Rodriguez had vanished. She wasn't at her apartment, wasn't at any of her jobs, wasn't at her brother's place. It was as if she'd evaporated into the city's 8 million souls. Adrian tried a different approach. He went to see Diego Rodriguez. The building was worse than Adrian expected. Crumbling brick, broken elevator, the smell of mildew and desperation in the hallways. He found the right apartment and knocked. Go away, a voice called. I'm not buying anything. Mr. Rodriguez? My name is Adrian Castellano. I'd like to talk to you about the accident. Silence, then the sound of a wheelchair approaching. The door opened to reveal a man with Elena's dark eyes and the same proud set to his jaw, but where Elena radiated gentleness, Diego burned with rage. You've got some nerve, Diego said, coming here after what you did. Can I come in? Why, so you can buy me off? Throw some money at me to make yourself feel better? No, Adrian said quietly. So we can talk about the truth. Something in his tone must have surprised Diego because he wheeled backward, allowing Adrian to enter. The apartment was small but clean, full of adaptive equipment. Through the open bedroom door, Adrian could see a hospital bed, a lift, the medical detritus of a life forever altered. I read the police report, Adrian said once they were settled. Diego in his wheelchair, Adrian on a worn couch that had seen better decades. You ran the red light. You were texting. The evidence is conclusive. Your evidence, Diego spat. Bought and paid for. I didn't pay anyone. I didn't need to. The truth was on my side. Adrian leaned forward. But that doesn't mean I'm innocent. I was drunk that night. If I'd been sober, maybe my reflexes would have been faster. Maybe I could have avoided the crash. Maybe you'd still be walking. The law says it was your fault, but morally, we're both responsible. Diego stared at him, some of the anger draining from his face replaced by confusion. Why are you here? Because of your sister. Adrian met his eyes. She told me what she did. What you asked her to do. Where is she? Diego's voice cracked. She won't answer my calls. I haven't seen her in days. I was angry, but I didn't mean... I never wanted her to disappear. I don't know where she is, Adrian admitted. I'm trying to find her. But first I needed to talk to you. To understand. For the next hour they talked. Really talked without lawyers or anger or assumptions. Diego told him about the accident from his perspective. The shock of impact. Waking up unable to feel his legs. The months of agonizing rehabilitation. He told Adrian about watching Elena sacrifice her dreams to take care of him. About the guilt that ate at him every day. She should be in school, Diego said, his voice thick with emotion. She should be living her life, not cleaning up my mess. But I'm too weak to tell her that, too afraid to be alone. Adrian told Diego about his parents, about building a business empire while feeling hollow inside, about meeting Elena and feeling alive for the first time. He told him about the betrayal, yes, but also about understanding it. I want to help, Adrian said finally. Not to buy forgiveness, I don't think money can do that. But to make things right, what are you talking about? Adrian pulled out his phone and showed Diego a medical center website. They're doing experimental stem cell treatments for spinal cord injuries. It's not guaranteed, but there's a 60% success rate for patients with your specific injury. I've already spoken to the director. He can see you next week. Diego's hands trembled as he looked at the phone. I can't afford this. The consultation alone would cost more than I make in a year. I'm paying for it. All of it. Treatment, rehabilitation, adaptive equipment, whatever you need. And before you say no, Adrian added, seeing Diego's mouth open, think about Elena. Think about giving her life back. Tears ran down Diego's face. Why would you do this? After what we did to you? Because Elena taught me something, Adrian said. She taught me that people are complicated. That we all make mistakes, hurt each other, fail to be who we want to be, but we can still choose to be better. To help instead of hurt, to build instead of destroy. Diego wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. She really loves you, you know. She came here before she disappeared, told me everything. She was a mess, crying and apologizing. I told her to go, to find you and fix it. But she said she couldn't, that she'd hurt us both too badly. Adrian's chest tightened. Did she say where she was going? No, but Diego hesitated. There's one place she might be. She used to go there when our mother was sick, when everything got too heavy. The beach at Rockaway. She said watching the ocean made her feel small, but in a good way, like her problems were just tiny pieces of something bigger. Adrian was already standing. Thank you. Mr. Castellano, Adrian, Diego called as he reached the door. If you find her, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her she deserves to be happy. Adrian nodded and left, hope and fear warring in his chest. Adrian found her just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Elena sat on the sand, her arms wrapped around her knees, staring out at the Atlantic as waves crashed and retreated in their eternal rhythm. She looked small and lost, a solitary figure against the vast expanse of water and sky. He approached slowly, his expensive shoes sinking into the sand. She didn't turn, but he saw her shoulders tense. She'd heard him. Elena, he said softly. How did you find me? Her voice was hoarse as if she'd been crying for days. Maybe she had, Diego told me. He's worried about you. Now she did turn, and Adrian's heart broke at what he saw. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale and drawn. She looked haunted. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for lying, for using you, for... Stop. Adrian sat down beside her, close but not touching. I didn't come here for more apologies. Then why did you come? He watched the waves for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The ocean was vast and indifferent, full of beauty and danger in equal measure. Like life, like love. I spent the last week angry, Adrian said. Furious, actually. You lied to me. You pretended to be someone you weren't. You manipulated me when I was at my most vulnerable. He paused, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. You did lie about being a nurse. You did come to the hospital with the intention of hurting me, but everything else, every conversation, every moment of kindness, every time you looked at me like I mattered, that was real. Wasn't it? Elena nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. It was real, all of it. That's why I couldn't go through with Diego's plan. That's why I had to tell you the truth, even though I knew it would destroy us. It didn't destroy us, Adrian said. It just made everything more complicated. He told her about visiting Diego, about their conversation, about the treatment center and the stem cell therapy. He told her about reading her file, learning about her mother, understanding the impossible position she'd been in. You sacrificed your dreams for your brother, Adrian said. You gave up nursing school, your future, everything, because you loved him. I can't be angry at you for that. I can only admire it. I don't deserve your admiration, Elena said bitterly. I deserve your hatred. Well, you're not getting it. Adrian finally reached out, gently turning her face toward his. What you're getting is a choice. You can walk away right now. I'll still pay for Diego's treatment. I'll set up a fund to cover all his medical expenses, his living costs, whatever he needs. You'll never have to see me again. Or, he took a shaky breath, or you can stay. We can start over. Not Adrian the billionaire and Elena the fake nurse, but just us. Two broken people trying to be better. Elena searched his face, clearly struggling to believe what she was hearing. Why would you want that? After everything I did? Because I fell in love with you, Adrian said simply. Not with a lie, not with an act, with you. The real Elena Rodriguez, who works 3 jobs and gives all her money to her brother, who cries during sad movies and hums when she's nervous, who looks at the ocean like it holds all the answers. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. That's who I love. That's who I want. I don't know if I can forgive myself, Elena whispered. Then let me help you. Adrian pulled her close, and after a moment's hesitation, she collapsed against him, her body shaking with sobs. He held her while she cried, while the sun sank below the horizon and the first stars appeared overhead. When her tears finally subsided, Elena pulled back just enough to look at him. I do love you, she said. I love you so much it terrifies me. I've never felt this way about anyone. Good, Adrian said, because I have a proposition for you. If this involves more lies, No lies, just truth, he smiled. Come back to school. Finish your nursing degree, the real one this time. I'll cover tuition and expenses. In return, once you graduate, come work for me. Elena blinked. Work for you? I own a pharmaceutical company, remember? I'm also on the board of 3 hospitals and 2 medical research facilities. They all need good nurses. Ethical ones. Compassionate ones. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But that's professional. Personally, I want you to give us a chance. A real chance. No secrets, no revenge plots, just 2 people learning to trust each other. What if I mess it up? Elena asked. What if I hurt you again? Then we'll deal with it, Adrian said. That's what people do when they love each other. They make mistakes, they forgive, they try again. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes it hurts like hell. But it's also the only thing that makes life worth living. Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean as if it might offer guidance. Finally, she turned back to Adrian with the smallest smile he'd ever seen. Tentative and fragile and achingly hopeful, she whispered. Okay, yes. Let's try. Adrian kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. The ocean roared its approval, waves crashing against the shore in an ancient rhythm that spoke of endings and beginnings, of cycles that repeated and renewed. When they finally pulled apart, Elena laughed. The first genuine laugh Adrian had heard from her. This is crazy, she said. You know that, right? We're completely insane. Probably, Adrian agreed. But I've been sane and sensible my whole life. It's overrated. They sat on the beach as darkness fell, talking and planning and dreaming. Elena told him about her aspirations for nursing school, about specializing in trauma care so she could help people the way she'd wanted to help Adrian, only legitimately this time. Adrian told her about his work, about developing affordable medications for rare diseases, about trying to use his wealth for good instead of just accumulating more. What about Diego? Elena asked eventually. Will it be weird with him and you? We'll figure it out, Adrian said. He's your brother. That makes him family. Besides, I like him. Under different circumstances, we might have been friends. He'll like you too, Elena said. Once he gets over wanting to punch you, I'll buy a good helmet. Elena laughed again, and the sound was like music. They stayed on the beach until late, until the cold drove them back to civilization. Adrian called his driver, and they rode back to the city in comfortable silence, Elena's head on his shoulder, their hands intertwined. Where are we going? Elena asked as the car pulled up to a luxury apartment building. Home, Adrian said. My home, unless you'd rather go to your place. Though fair warning, my apartment has better heat and a significantly lower rodent population. Elena smiled. Your place sounds good. Inside the penthouse, Elena wandered from room to room, taking in the expensive art, the designer furniture, the wall of windows overlooking Central Park. This is your life, she said wonderingly. Your real life. Part of it, Adrian said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. The other part is standing right here. She turned in his embrace, her expression serious. I need to tell you something. About that night in the hospital when we first, you don't have to explain. No, I do. Elena took a breath. I've never been with anyone. Not like that. I was going to with you because I thought it would make the revenge plan work better, but then I couldn't, because it would have been a violation of something sacred, and I wanted my first time to be with someone I loved, not someone I was using. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. Thank you for telling me. And for the record, I don't want anything from you except what you want to give freely. We have time. All the time in the world. But Elena shook her head, a blush creeping up her cheeks. That's just it. I do want to give freely now, tonight, with you. Elena. Adrian's voice was rough. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. What followed was tender and slow, full of whispered reassurances and gentle touches. Adrian treated Elena like she was made of spun glass, precious beyond measure. And when they finally came together, it felt like a healing of old wounds, of broken trust, of hearts that had learned to beat in unison. Afterward, they lay tangled in Adrian's silk sheets, the city lights twinkling through the windows like earthbound stars. I love you, Elena whispered. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you. You already have, Adrian said, pulling her closer. From the moment you told me the truth, even knowing what it would cost, that was love. That was choosing me over your fear. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two broken pieces forming something whole. 6 months later, Elena stood in the lecture hall at NYU, her white coat crisp and new, a stethoscope around her neck. She'd just finished her first day back at nursing school, really back, legitimately enrolled with nothing to hide. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. How was it? Perfect, she typed back. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Dinner tonight? I have news about Diego. Elena's heart lifted. Good news, the best. He took his first steps today. Elena nearly dropped her phone. The stem cell treatment was working. Diego was going to walk again. She sent back a string of heart emojis, something the old Elena, the one who'd been drowning in grief and desperation, would never have allowed herself. But she wasn't that Elena anymore. She'd been given a second chance by Adrian, by Diego, by life itself, and she was determined not to waste it. That evening, in Adrian's penthouse, which was slowly becoming their penthouse, as Elena's things migrated from Queens to Manhattan, they celebrated Diego's progress. He video-called from the rehabilitation center, grinning wider than Elena had seen him smile in years. 3 steps, Diego said proudly. 3 whole steps. The doctors say I might be able to walk unassisted in another 6 months. That's amazing, Elena said, tears of joy streaming down her face. I'm so proud of you. None of this would have happened without Adrian, Diego said, his voice thick with emotion. Man, I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything, Adrian said, his arm around Elena's shoulders. Just be happy. That's all I want. After the call ended, Elena and Adrian sat on the balcony, watching the city breathe beneath them. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, Elena said. That this is all a dream. If it is, I'm having the same dream, Adrian said, which would be statistically improbable. Elena laughed. You and your statistics. You love my statistics. I love you, Elena corrected, turning to face him. Statistics and all. Adrian kissed her, soft and deep, a kiss that promised tomorrow and next week and all the years stretching ahead. When they pulled apart, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It's too soon, he said quickly, seeing Elena's eyes widen. I know it's too soon. This isn't a proposal, I promise, but I saw this and thought of you and I needed you to have it. Elena opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a wave, frozen in mid-curl, impossibly detailed and beautiful. For the ocean, Adrian said. For new beginnings. For surviving the storm and coming out stronger on the other side. Elena couldn't speak through her tears. She just turned around, lifting her hair so Adrian could fasten the necklace. The silver was cool against her skin. A reminder that this was real, that she was here, that she'd been given something precious and rare. A second chance at love. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For forgiving me. For believing in me. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. You deserved it, Adrian said firmly. You always deserved it. You just needed to believe it yourself. They stayed on the balcony late into the night, talking and laughing and planning their future. A future that included Elena's graduation. A job at one of Adrian's hospitals, earned on her own merit, she insisted. Maybe eventually a wedding on that beach at Rockaway where everything had changed. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges. Elena's insecurities, Adrian's trust issues, the complicated dynamics with Diego. But they would face those challenges together, with honesty and love and the knowledge that they'd already survived the worst. Elena touched the wave pendant at her throat and smiled. She'd come to that hospital 6 months ago seeking revenge, planning to destroy the man who'd hurt her brother. Instead, she'd found something she never expected. Redemption, forgiveness, and a love that was messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Sometimes, she realized, the best happy endings came from the darkest beginnings. Sometimes you had to break completely before you could heal. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you thought was your enemy turned out to be your salvation. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, noticing her distant expression. Gratitude, Elena said simply. I'm thinking about gratitude. And as the city sparkled below them, full of millions of lives intersecting and diverging in an endless dance of chance and choice, Elena Rodriguez felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Pure, unfiltered hope for a future she'd never dared to imagine. The millionaire had fallen in love with the poor nurse who saved his life, and she, through her courage to tell the truth, to choose love over revenge, to believe in second chances, had saved him in return. Not from death, but from something worse. A life without meaning, without connection, without love. In the end, that was the only kind of saving that mattered.